Hello, I'm going to be reading an essay, a short essay that I've written. It's called The Real American Dream. I need to provide a quick backdrop for the calculation I'm going to attempt. First, the term the Taliban does not refer to the original government entity the U.S. declared war against. It, in fact, has come to refer to at least four independently operating jihadist groups whose primary and secondary targets are 1. Invading infidels, and 2. Traitors, in no particular order. The traitors consist of Afghan security forces, ASF, in the same way American revolutionists would have viewed their neighbors, maybe even their family, who chose allegiance to England over independence. And the foreign invaders are nothing short of how we still view the Japan that attacked Pearl Harbor. It is tragic that these warriors resort to such brutal tactics. I personally feel that the fact that less than 20,000 of these people, that most Americans would honestly consider primitive, have maintained such a level of combat that has demanded counter forces so much greater in proportion and technology for such a long time. It is a great accomplishment in their minds, but not too noteworthy to Americans. No less an accomplishment than that which we still feel when we think about winning our freedom from the military force of the British Empire. I think this is something that binds these men, the Taliban, to our nation's heritage. Afghanistan had to fight 3 wars of independence with the English Empire. Even after the 3 wars, it was not a military victory in Afghanistan that severed Britain's imperial military influence. It was something that can definitely be argued by scholars and politicians, but in my novice opinion, was directly solidified in history as a result of Gandhi's non-violent defeat of Britannia in India. Also, consider that U.S. forces found one man in one big-ass country, Saddam in Iraq, hiding in a hole in the dirt. We spearheaded the operation that led to the killing of Pablo Escobar. And don't forget, most of us have seen Black Hawk Down. And the big daddy of all Where's Waldo's, U.S. forces snuck into a military-controlled country, to a city right next to a major military academy, and got Osama bin Laden and then snuck out. Sorta. Except for that top secret stealth helicopter our forces left behind that malfunctioned, meaning that single mission cost multiple billions of buku tax dollars. Either these groups of mountain men in Afghanistan are skilled far beyond the reach of our technology, in which case we should question what technologies are being invested into and why such U.S. military technologies are apparently much more primitive than the people we arrogantly call camel jockeys. Or what? I almost can't even think of an or. These guys are like ninja engines, but better, concealing their travel routes, methods, recruitment rendezvous sites, as most of the jihadists are not native to Afghanistan, weapon stashes, escape strategies following attacks from the unmanned drone Hellfire missiles, satellites, patrols, paid informants, and whatever other methods of surveillance NATO forces and the majority of the CIA personnel whose highest concentration of agents and assets is in Afghanistan utilize proves these guys, the Taliban, can float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, whether we like it or not. Or is this indeed one of the most grotesque misuses of governmental power being perpetrated against the civilian population? Us? True, the use of the FBI to infiltrate the civil rights movement, spy on its leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., Harry Belafonte, Ralph Abernathy, to name a few, is another example of government resources being used in a way that endangers its own society and peace, as well as, let's say, selling American made missiles to Iran to buy cocaine from guerrilla rebels in Nicaragua and using CIA assets and equipment to transport the drugs into the US for public distribution on the black market? Literally. Yes, those two are very apparent examples of government corruption and misuse of power. Don't even mention the Tuskegee experiments on US citizens by the US government. Even if you consider the mainstream war info Ganda, the management of this war is pretty bad. Like Vietnam, officially declared a war after the US government tells the public that the enemy attacked a US naval vessel in the Gulf of Tonkin. The public rallies behind the government to defend our nation from an act of war, as the president stated it to be. Something that was actually completely fabricated by the government, including the president, for the sole purpose of seducing the public into a legally constitutional war. A war, I am positive, the top brass and political elites like Kissinger thought would be a what? A walk in the park? A cinch? Maybe. A capitalist friendly, lucrative social environment, both politically and financially. Whatever vision the architects of the Vietnam War had, we can argue they did what they did for one devious reason or another, but they did do what they did. What they did just happened to extend and expand the war to the breaking point of the public, costing billions of tax dollars, over 58,000 young American lives. Oh, and just in case there are still some Americans that recognize people of other nations as human beings, around 2 million Indo-Asian lives. Is Afghanistan a new US experience? Not as a potential loss. We lost Korea and Vietnam. Not in not having attacked us, but still being invaded. Not in such amazingly low casualty rates. More than 12,000 soldiers have died, including killed in action, accidents, soldier on soldier violence, and the deadliest threat to US soldiers right now, suicides. But those numbers are still far lower than the 100,000 plus youths we sacrificed in Korea and Vietnam. Not in that, as an unconventional military force, using the training US personnel provided them 20 years ago to fight the Soviets, they, the Taliban, have survived war against a coalition of the world's top militaries, over 120,000 NATO forces, and a large national force of security soldiers, which they consider traitors, over 300,000 soldiers, trained by the US with the latest and greatest combat training. This war is unique in no way whatsoever. An invasion of US forces on the grounds of some threat against national security that tends to ever increase the burden of footing the bill on the public, including the young lives and their emotional stability, creating economic hardships, while the government and military sell national interests and services to the highest bidder, generating massive capitalist profits, meaning increasing their own personal wealth. This is the real American dream, and I think we should wake up.